One Piece probably holds the world record for the most villains in a story. Maybe Scooby-Doo is higher, but One Piece would still be very close to the top. While spending countless hours rereading the manga, I've often found myself finding a lot of similarities between villains, in personality, design, or overall theme. So what better to spend some more hours categorizing the villains of One Piece into 7 different types. Let's find out how similar they really are, and how some seemingly very different ones are actually closer related than anyone could have thought. Type 1. The clowns. Let's kick things off with a type that can be both very fun, but at other times extremely irritating. And no, Buggy is not the only character here, even though he's the poster boy. So let's start with him. Way back when he was first introduced, it seemed like he wouldn't be a total goof. He blew up one of his own crewmates, vaporized parts of Orange Town. As a kid, I thought he would be this pure psycho clown, kinda like how he was portrayed in the live action. That didn't last very long in the manga though, did it? Fast forward 1,000 chapters and he's an emperor of the sea. He really is Oda's favorite character, isn't he? I love that Oda just took an early character and elevated them to the very top. I would have done the same easily. Of course, I would have picked my boy Pearl though. Then you got clown number 2, the silver fox himself, Foxy. Everything about this man's existence is goofy, but I gotta give it to him. He's got a real passion for the Davy Back fights, the great prodigy of rocks that he is. This man built his entire crew of these games. He didn't conquer islands or terrorize seas. He tricked pirates into playing dodgeball for their crewmates, just like the GOAT himself. His crew is also filled with wacky characters. I can't stand Porsche. The thing on her face makes me mad. And why are these guys so big? Shout out to this guy though, great announcer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are...
I wanna quickly mention Wapol too. Have we ever seen a more unserious villain than he was? And unlike Buggy, he was like that from the very start. His 5th panel is him taking a bite of the Going Merry. After he got defeated, he went on to create a toy empire, which is just so great. In what other series would a villain go on to become a toy tycoon? None. And finally Caesar Clown. Unlike the others, he was introduced as a real threat, even beating some formidable opponents like Smoker, marking the 12th time he died at Punk Hazard. He was not just a threat, but a pure psychopath, having spent much of his life experimenting on kids and creating smile fruits that ruined many people's lives. Despite this, the Straw Hats carried him around like luggage for half a decade, and his aura of seriousness went up in smoke real fast. Type 2. The Tyrants. Now, if the clowns are villains we laugh at, the tyrants are the ones we more often than not hate. Well, we all hate Caesar, but you get the picture. These are the guys who rule through fear, control, and pure ego. Let's start small with the first one we see, Axe and Morgan. Romance Dawn really set the tone with him. He forced his men to build a literal statue of himself. He wasn't the strongest, but he embodied tyranny perfectly. He ruled through fear and abused his power at every opportunity he got. Then there's Don Krieg, the self-proclaimed ruler of the East Blue. I gotta admit, as a kid this guy felt terrifying. The armor, the weapons, the poison gas. He looked unbeatable, but deep down he's just a coward pretending to be a conqueror. Krieg wanted to control everything in sight, but folded the second he was actually tested. It seems like his hobby is just shooting his crewmates whenever they have a different opinion. We all know that in reality Pearl is the strongest member of the Krieg pirates. Arlong though, he was different. Arlong wasn't pretending. He had both the muscle and the ideology to back his tyranny. For Nami and her village, he wasn't some cartoon villain. He was a nightmare. The whole Fishman supremacy thing made him one of the most personal and hateable antagonists early on. And then you scale that idea up to Wano with Orochi. Orochi might not have Kaido's power, but he didn't need it. He had Kaido's army. He turned an entire country into a factory, poisoning its people while sitting in luxury himself. That's tyranny at its ugliest. Of course, we can't talk tyrants without Doflamingo. This man took everything Morgan and Arlong dreamed of and put it on steroids. He had an entire kingdom at his fingertips, the people worshipping him while he bled them dry, all while pulling the strings of the entire underworld. He wasn't just a tyrant of Dressrosa, he was a tyrant of the New World. The tyrants are one of the things that One Piece does so well. Oda takes that basic idea of someone ruling through fear, and he shows us just how bad it can get, from a little marine base to an entire kingdom. In my last video, I told you my dog became a pirate. Her bounty started at just 1 berry, but for every single person that subscribes, her bounty goes up by 1. You guys already boosted her to 28 berries after the last video. I'll keep revealing her new total each video, so if you want to help her chase her dream of becoming a Yonko, hit that subscribe button to raise her bounty. Type 3. The Schemers. If tyrants beat you down with brute force, schemers get you with something much worse. Patience, Arrogance and manipulation. These are the villains who are always 3 steps ahead. Crocodile is the perfect example. On the surface, he's this heroic warlord protecting Alabasta, but behind the scenes, he's running Baroque Works, a massive criminal network where nobody even knew who he really was. The man played an entire kingdom like a puppet, turning its people against their own ruler while he sat in his casino and waited to strike. We talked about Doflamingo in the last type, but honestly, he fits in here as well. He managed to get the throne of Dressrosa using his elaborate scheme, making him the first villain to fit in 2 different types. And then there's Blackbeard, the ultimate schemer. He doesn't just stumble into opportunities, he creates them. He waited decades on Whitebeard's crew just for the right fruit, and he took down Thatch the second he saw it, then built his empire on chaos. He used Impel Down as his personal draft pick, walking out with a crew of monsters while the world was distracted. And of course, the biggest move of all, stealing Whitebeard's fruit in the middle of Marineford. That's not luck, that's a master plan executed with zero fear. But it's not just pirates, CP9 fits here perfectly. Their entire existence in Water 7 was a con. They worked for Iceberg for years, smiling, bowing, blending into society, all while secretly plotting to get their hands on Pluton. When they revealed themselves, it felt like one of the best betrayals in the series. The schemers don't just fight their enemies, they move entire systems against them. A tyrant might rule a country, but a schemer can easily topple one. Type 4. The monsters. Some villains don't need schemes or tricks. They walk onto the stage and the air itself gets heavier. These are the monsters. Villains who are less like people and more like natural disasters. Kaido is the ultimate example. This guy wasn't just a Yonko, he was the wall of the new world. His entire introduction is him literally trying to kill himself because nothing else can. That's how durable he is. And when he decides to fight, entire countries crumble. Onigashima wasn't a war against Kaido's army, it was a war against Kaido. Every punch, every transformation, it felt like our main characters were trying to climb a mountain that was alive and angry. And that's because it was. But he's not alone. When you really think about it, Magellan is one of the scariest villains in the whole series. He isn't a Yonko, he's not even a pirate, just the warden of a prison. And still, he wiped out everyone that came in his way at Impel Down. Luffy didn't just lose against him, he nearly died on the spot. And according to me, that just makes Magellan terrifying. He's not ambitious, he's not scheming, he's just there. And being there is enough to ruin you in his case. Akainu is another one. At this point, he's less a man and more the embodiment of the Navy's brutality. He wouldn't just fight you, he would erase you. And Ace found that out the hardest way possible. I would say that Kuma also fits here, back before we knew his story. He was like a machine of destruction. Other examples include Ors or Big Mom, just massive unstoppable forces that feels less like characters and more like boss fights. Type 5. The Rivals. Not every villain in One Piece is about cruelty, greed or destruction. Some of the best antagonists aren't really evil at all. They're rivals. This is one of my favorite types of antagonists. And it's mostly thanks to one character, Charlotte Katakuri, my absolute favorite character. This man isn't your standard egomaniac tyrant. He manages to earn Luffy's respect in a way none of his other opponents have. Their clash turned into a display of skill and prowess, with the two constantly trying to outmatch each other. I don't think Luffy has ever learned and developed more during a fight than against Katakuri. And the icing on the cake is how Katakuri wouldn't let Flampe interfere in their clash, and stabbed himself to even the playing field. How can you not love this man? He lost on purpose, by the way, and he wins against King. Then you got Smoker, who's basically been chasing Luffy on and off since Loketown. He's just a marine who can't stand watching pirates get away with everything. And because of that, he feels way more like a rival than a true villain. Unfortunately, Smokey couldn't really match the strength of New World pirates, and their rivalry has kinda dwindled. But I think that might be because Oda is setting up Luffy's final marine rival, Kobe. Even if it's more future potential right now, we all know the day is coming where Kobe stands in front of Luffy as a full-on marine hero. It's gonna hit hard too, because of how far back the relationship goes. They are two people who really respect each other, but are destined to collide anyway. Or are they? I think there is a chance that Luffy might get Kobe to switch sides before their final war against the government. I can't wait to find out what Kobe will decide. The rivals are special because you don't walk away hating them. If anything, you often respect them. They make the story feel bigger because they remind us not every clash is about evil and good. Sometimes it's just about two unstoppable wills colliding. Type 6, the Enforcers. Now, this category is different from the rest, because these aren't villains who rise up chasing treasure, chaos, or personal grudges. These are the people who enforce the will of something bigger than themselves. The will of the celestial dragons or the world government itself. They don't need dreams or ambition. Their entire role is being the hammer that smashes down on anyone who dares to step out of line. Take Kizaru. This guy is the perfect example of a government pawn. He doesn't fight because he cares or because he's got some burning sense of justice. He just shows up, shrugs, and obliterates whoever he's told to. The fact that he can be this casual while being one of the strongest men alive is terrifying. Then you got figures from CP0. They will go through with any plan, no matter how brutal, even if it means genocide or covering up the filthiest government secrets. And unlike the other Cypher Pole branches, they directly communicate with the highest authorities in the world. And of course the Gorosei and God's Knights sit at the very top of this category. We finally got to see the Gorosei in action during Egghead, and they really lived up to the hype. With them, there's no questions asked, no hesitation, just absolute obedience to Emu and terrifying strength. These villains work because they are in many cases faceless extensions of the system, and that can make them scarier than almost anyone else. Type 7, the final bosses. And finally, we arrived at the end game. These villains aren't here to stand in Luffy's way for an arc. They are the ones that might be very well waiting for him at the end of the story. The most obvious candidate is Emu, the shadowy ruler of the world. Emu is the true enemy of freedom itself. If One Piece ends in a massive war to tear down the system, Emu will be the final boss waiting at the very top. But then there's Blackbeard, and he's the wild card. If Emu represents the oppressive world order, Blackbeard is pure chaos. He doesn't want to rule this existing system. He wants to tear it apart and replace it with himself. I mean, the man's been moving like a chess master since day one. From betraying his crew to stealing the dark fruit. As Van Augur told us, Blackbeard wants the world. And this means that Luffy might have to beat Emu and then face Blackbeard as the very last obstacle in the story. And then there's the ultimate dark horse, Buggy. Yeah, I said it. We all know how much Oda loves Buggy. And he's already been elevated to Emperor status. If Crossgull keeps gaining influence, Oda might be pulling the biggest gag of all time. Buggy somehow stumbling his way into Laugh Tale and being Luffy's final opponent. We all know he wants to, the question is if he can manage to. Now that you know the 7 types of One Piece villains, I bet you wanna know the 7 levels of One Piece Marines. Luckily, I made that video. You won't believe who's hiding in level 7.